Taylor, the host of Leaders Lead the podcast. We are going to have an amazing show today. That's because we have an amazing guest. That's because you're here and you're amazing. So we're going to have a good time. Do me a favor, light up the comment section. Let me know that you're here. Type in the word here and also tell me what state or city or now country that you're listening to the show from, and share the stream with your friend. This is going to be a really good show. Hey, what's up? I'm Tony Taylor. Are you here for Leaders Lead the podcast? Let's go. Hey, how did you beat me? Look, let me tell you about this podcast. We got like 5 seconds. Leaders Lead the podcast is about leadership. Not just the leader without, but the leader within. All of these leaders that I'm talking to across the country, well, across the world now, they have one thing in common, and that's that they have overcome some insurmountable obstacles to get to where they're at today. Come on, let's go. Hey, welcome to Leaders Lead the podcast. This is season 2, episode 2. I'm super excited. We got a special guest. We got Mike Wahle. Let me look at these accomplishments. Mike Wahle, former NFL lineman, Pro Bowler, played on some very legendary teams, Green Bay Packers, Carolina Panthers, Seattle Seahawks, and he is the founder of Process to Perform, a platform built around solving issues. Man, I'm so excited to meet you today, man. You're such a cool dude. I wanted to use that dude that's like really long theatrical intro, but we're having such a good conversation. I wanted to go ahead and get this started, man. Welcome to the show, brother.
Yeah, Tony, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. I love the energy, especially on that intro, man. It's insane. It gets me juiced up.
That's good, man. That's what I want, man. That's what I want. I was doing some research on you, and you played on some freaking legendary teams, bro. And like how does that feel being a part of like a really big part of history? And let me preface this with this. You are one of the legends. Every time I Googled your name or I saw anything, it was legend. One of the best offensive linemen of all time. Like, how does that feel?
Well, I think that's all subjective, depending. Like, I'm just, unfortunately, I guess for me, I'm just like a husband and a dad at my house. That's all I am. But when you're in those buildings, like let's start with the Green Bay Packers, or even go back further, even with the Naval Academy. Like, you have a responsibility to the people that have gone before you and the people that are in that building that have worked their entire lives, especially when you start thinking about professional athletes and all of the history that goes into becoming a Green Bay Packer. What that means from the '60s Packers, the Lombardi era, what that means to the Brett Favre era, now the Aaron Rodgers era, and Mike Holmgren, all these guys that have been there, leaders, people that have absolutely sacrificed so much to get where they want, like had that plan, had that process in place, did everything they needed to do to become the success that they are. So you feel that responsibility, and you look, hopefully you look forward to that responsibility and try to kind of live up to those standards.
I love what you did there, right? And that's really indicative of a leader. I was giving you all the praise, giving you all the accolades, and you bounced it back on the people that came before you. What's up with that, man?
Well, I just think that I think you have to have a sense of history when you go into a lot of buildings it could be in any workplace, I suppose. But it's like, Tony, who are you always trying to represent when you go somewhere, right? You're trying to represent yourself and your family. We
Yeah.
always say in the NFL, you say, hey, man, that name on your back, probably more important than the name on the front, right? Because you got a legacy on the back. That wall means something to me. It means everything to me.
Yeah.
And so all those people you're thinking about from that perspective, that's one thing. But then when you get to go to a storied franchise and the traditions that they have, the locker room that you walk into, the confidence in preparation that those leaders, those Reggie Whites, the Roy Butlers, Brett Favre, Frank Warner's, Mark Chimera's, all those guys that had that conference and teach you what it means to be a tough guy, right? Like, we don't have to, like the Green Bay Packers, when you get there, when I come out of the Naval Academy, you don't have to manufacture emotion to be good in the NFL. If you work, if you, hey, we kick ass, we work hard, and we love doing both things. And if you get
Yeah.
that mentality down, I mean, you don't have to be that manufactured emotion, banging your head against the wall, tough guy, man. You just like doing those three things, and you like spending time with your friends, and you can be really, really good doing both.
Is it? Yeah, the Green Bay Packers, man, they're so storied. Isn't there like a 10-year waiting list just to get tickets to go to one
Oh
of the
no.
games?
So I think it's, I'll be honest with you. I think if you put your name on the waiting list for season tickets when the day you're born, which is what happens in Green Bay, I think by the time you're like 42 years old, you get tickets. That's
Wow.
how I'm that yeah, that's how crazy it is.
Wow. Yeah, and there's people when they get tickets, they start crying. I saw people pass out because because they got the opportunity to be able to pay for some season tickets. Well, let me rewind this. Your life before going to the Naval Academy
Mhm.
and before going to the NFL, what did that look like?
So I grew up in a small mountain town, Lake Arrowhead, California, San Bernardino Mountains. It's kind of it's the mountain range, uh, I guess, between Los Angeles and Las Vegas. So you have to go through the Cajon Pass and you southern mountain. It's a small. We had one stoplight. We're like that. We're Division 8 football, one being like the big football league. We're
Damn, I
Division
didn't
Eight.
know they had Division 8.
Well, it's because why would they? It doesn't make any sense. But but we were Division 8, honestly, at the time, it was a terrible program. We were never over 500 all 4 years I was playing at Rim. When I look at, like, when I have conversations with all my friends from the Naval Academy and all the guys you met in the league, I think I'm the only guy that I ever got that far with never being over 500, and we were only 500 once. So it's one of those places where, small community, you got to drive 40 minutes to do everything. But close knit group, you're always going to be that big fish in a small pond. So for me, being a three sport athlete and kind of being able to excel in I think a smaller tank, I think that helped me over the long run, because you just get to keep trying these new things. You're always on the field. You're always getting reps. You're always getting opportunities. And, that's something now. I have kids that are playing soccer, and they play soccer at extremely high levels. And it's like, I try to tell them if they're struggling, I go, you're not competing against like the 13,000 rim of the world community. You're competing against the 3 million Austin community, or the 30 million greater Texas community. It's different now. It's just the sporting world is different than it used to be. But I was very lucky to be raised by two parents who I think were teachers first, and kind of instilled those ideas in me, how important school was. Being a student athlete was kind of what my responsibilities were, and yeah, just very, very. Life is. I almost sometimes feel like I was Forrest Gump going through life. Like some things just happened to me that probably shouldn't have.
Like
But
you just show up
yeah, yeah.
in some of the greatest speeches in the world, and you're just looking around.
No,
Oh
for
man,
real, for real.
that's awesome. You and I were talking before about life after playing the game, and I was just kind of marveled by you and your career, because the things that you're doing right now is amazing. And we were talking about the parallel between like I was in the Marine Corps, and you went to Naval Academy, so I know you're probably still like really involved in the military community, and you see there's a similarity between the two, to where after they get out there's something missing and they start going downhill, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, certain mental things that they go through. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, like we were talking before, Tony, I think we both agree that structure and purpose are things that are prevalent in the military, and then obviously, I think in professional sports, and probably most competitive endeavors. And you can't really be successful in either one of those communities without having a real point of passion about who you are and where you're at, and having a routine that creates the habits that are going to help you be successful. And when those things are no longer there, we always talk about planning, right? Well, planning is really the enemy of distraction. And when you have a plan, when you have a purpose, that's when you can stay on task, and stay continuing to move forward and gaining momentum. And it's just really difficult. You see this all the time, unfortunately, with ex-military and ex professional athletes, they don't have that plan anymore. They don't have that purpose, and they certainly don't have that routine that they were forced, sometimes forced to stick to, and it becomes very problematic. And
Yeah.
that's why I think there's so many great communities, especially in the military. There's some military community. There's so many people out there now, friends of mine, that are job placement and just trying to make sure these guys are getting on the right path. Because um, oftentimes, kind of probably a broader topic, right, Tony? But we don't do a very good job. We do a great job of saying we love our military. We don't do a great job of supporting them when they need the support the most.
Yeah. No, definitely, definitely. I'm glad that you said that about purpose, because that's one of the things that I think that we lose when we step away from something so great. I remember being in the military and actually being told that the future of this country depends on you. And I know that you were told the same thing. You have this legacy that is so much bigger than yourself on your shoulders. So you have got to get your butt in gear to make it happen. What happens when you wake up and you don't have that purpose, right? Because I'm pretty sure that you have friends that lose that purpose. What's some advice that you give them to find it, or do you, or are you active with helping them even before they even get to that point?
That's a great question, and I think generally when you transition out of anything, and some people, some people look at retirement from one or the other as a stepping stone to something bigger and better, right?
Mhm.
And you kind of hope that in some way, in some form or fashion, that when everybody decides to remove themselves from a career, it's because they're at peace and they want to go on and do something else. And I think a lot of times, especially I can tell you on the professional sports side, the people that I know that have the biggest um, withdrawal issues are those that are kind of have regret, and the regret stems from either a they left before they were ready because they were forced out because they didn't maybe they were injured, or more often than not they didn't put themselves in a position to make their own decisions. They put themselves in a position through their actions, their routines, and their habits that allowed other people to make decisions for them. And I think that's one of the worst regrets you can live with. But
Yeah.
once you get there, once you leave, you decide to move on. I think the question is, you don't necessarily need to replace that like for like, but you do have to find something that you're passionate about that motivates you to get up every day and get your head off that pillow and get moving.
Yeah.
And certainly, Tony, I'm sure you agree with this, like structure of some sort, whether it's getting up early and making your bed again, whether it's getting up early and working out, getting a cup of coffee before you get moving, whatever that is, starting to put those little pieces of structure back into place so you have some semblance of what you think is normalcy, I think is a huge help for men and women getting out of either the military service, professional sports, or any really, again, any competitive endeavor.
Yeah, or just retiring, period, man. There's so many people that I've known, especially like in the fire service, police, or just construction. They retire and then 2 weeks later they're freaking dead, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what they did. Their whole life was pretty much work. I know with you, as far as transition, I was reading that when you left the NFL, it was because of an injury. So it sounds like you had already did some work prior to you getting injured to where you could be able to set yourself up for success, right?
Well, it was interesting, Tony. When I hurt myself initially, it was my ninth year in the league, and I'd kind of played through some broken hands and concussions and kind of sprained knees and all that before. But when I blew out my shoulder
You're
the
fucking
first
tough,
time,
dude. That's
what's
tough.
that?
You
No,
played
I
through
mean,
broken
well,
hands.
I'll be honest with you. Back then, it really wasn't tough. Now we think it was tough, but it's all a context of when you played the sport. When we played the sport back then, you just played. You didn't have a really thought. You didn't really think that much about yourself. We didn't have this kind of branding power that we do now. So we just played. We just liked playing, and we just kept playing. We didn't really think about tomorrow maybe as much as we should have, to be fair.
Dude,
But
that's tough. This microphone fell on my hand earlier, and I was like, "Ow, I gotta go to the
I,
hospital."
yeah, yeah. It's funny. It's funny now. Guys will like they'll snap their ligament in their thumb or something. And they're like, "Oh, you mean like this?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're getting surgery next week." Like, "Oh, okay, well, yeah, they didn't give me that option." But it's just like I said, times are different. When I got out, I was I was lucky in that I think I had a career that I was proud of. Um, I wasn't always, I made a lot of bad decisions, but I always felt like I didn't really leave a lot of stones unturned. I was
Mhm.
very satisfied with where I was. I was no longer able to perform at the level that I was comfortable with. And that last year with the Seahawks, I blew up my shoulder again. Idzik and those guys, they asked me to come back because of, I think I was of value to them just from being around from a locker room perspective, even though I was not playing at a level that I thought was winnable. And you get to that point, I think, when you're playing at a very high level, I think you get to a point where like I just couldn't live with myself if I got like Matt Hasselbeck, my quarterback, hurt because I couldn't do the job. I just wasn't capable of doing it anymore. Me at 50% or whatever it was, I just wasn't comfortable being that guy. I'd rather just retire. And so I was kind of at peace when I retired. And you still don't really know what you're going to do, but you do start having a bucket list of things that you want to get done, or at least directions that you can start moving into. Whether it was for me, I started getting my series licenses so I could start trading, working in finance. I immediately went out and got the best thing I ever got. Probably was my certified strength and conditioning specialist certificate from the NSCA, which is something I had been training athletes and had been like, that was such a huge part of my life. That preparation was such a huge part of my life, even beforehand, that just getting that felt really natural and just allowed me to kind of be a little bit more of a thought leader on that area. So you just start throwing some stuff against the wall. It's not necessarily about having a defined like plan that on day one, but it's like we talked about before, be curious, go find some new opportunities and just see where they lead.
Curiosity. I thought that that was pretty cool that, we were talking about being curious. And I think that's important, especially with transitioning is important. If you're just in the job, you could just tell the difference between somebody that doesn't have any curiosity. You could the same plan every single day. They do the same thing from the car to the desk, from the desk to the bathroom, from the bathroom to home. You could just sense that there is no curiosity out there. Is there anything that you've done to where you're like, I wonder if I did this, and then boom, it works.
God, I could tell you probably a couple that went that way, and I could tell you a lot of times where I have this curiosity, and my dad always told me this. He said, "Listen, you're going to have 20 ideas over the next 10 years, and 19 of them are going to suck, but you're going to have to do them. You're going to have to go do them, and the one is going to make it all worth it." And so I whether it was trying to start I was trying to start a like a sports technology company kind of before the technology was available. We tried to start an AI. We've been kind of messing around with AI and sports analytics to better improve the way that we go about teaching technique on athletes. And I don't I don't necessarily know enough on the AI side to do it. So we just continue to slowly and slowly keep learning. But there's just these there's just these things that when you have a passion for helping other people, for helping athletes in particular, in my case, like really try to help athletes reach their ceiling, you start seeing where the cracks in the armor are, and you just try to start filling in those gaps. And once you see an opportunity, it's like you can't sleep at night unless you're compelled to go figure out and see at least if you can make a dent.
Yeah, I like that. So it's almost like you become obsessed a little bit, right?
Well, I think there's a little bit of listen, you didn't get to where you were being calm and calm and cool all the time. I bet your foot's shaking just like mine is right now.
Yeah, dude. I'm obsessed, bro. Like obsessed with the process, dude. While we're like, I'm not. I'll be real with you. Before we started, I'm looking. I want to make sure my camera is right. I'm like, man, I want that light over there to be amber. I want this one to be clear. There's too much freaking Yeah, obsessed.
Yeah.
Obsessed.
And we all have, it's funny, we all have like my wife always, there's certain things in life. I always say, you hear that conversation or that statement that the way you do anything is the way you do everything. I don't necessarily subscribe to that, right? I subscribe to when you love something, the way you go about that, like the way you do that part of your life is the way the whole thing's going to look. So when things you love, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And I've always had, you find deficiencies in your own personality, and I'm not maybe as, like you just talked about those lights. And for me, it's like the conversation is all that matters. It's not the presentation. And you're smart enough to know, man, the presentation matters a ton. You know what I mean? So we're all kind of just learning and growing. But again, that's just part of what makes this so much fun.
I'm glad you said that. Is different perspectives, man, and I'm definitely loving this conversation. I have to ask you. This has been my lifelong question about offensive linemen. There's a trend, man. Is it true? There's a two-part question. One, is it true that y'all have to like weigh a certain amount, like 350 and above? Two, is there like a rule whenever you get out of the NFL that you automatically drop 100 pounds? Because I'm looking at you, bro. I'm looking
Yeah,
at
man.
you, and I remember when Jeff Saturday. It seemed like Jeff Saturday retired,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden, dude, he was freaking skinny, and I'm just like, what the hell happened? So is that a rule or what?
So the first one, I'll tell you kind of a funny story. So I was always playing. I played at 295, and I was not a big guy. Strong. I think I was pretty strong. I think it was very powerful, but I was not big. I didn't have a lot of mass. I tried to keep my body fat at kind of a normal level. I had the worst year I ever had in the NFL. My offensive line coach came to me in the preseason, or in the off season, and at the time it was like, if you're 6'5", 6'6", you have to be 315 pounds. So he came to me and we want you at 315. I said, well, I'm 295 right now. It seems excessive, but so I went and Tony, I drank 2 gallons of milk every single day
Oh
for the
my
entire
God.
off season. I squatted like 4 days a week, and I got 300. I was up to 300. I probably was, 313 pounds. I'd throw a water bottle in my back pocket when I weighed in. They'd be 315. It was the abs. It was. I got benched that year. It was the worst year of my career. I was a terrible football player. I couldn't move, couldn't do anything. So I got back down to 295. Now, so they want you. They see one good athlete with a huge frame, big bone structure, growth hormone head, that head that's like twice the size of mine just naturally, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like the
Uh-huh.
guy can't do anything like Steve Hutchinson, Walter
Come on,
Jones.
like a head like this.
Yeah, there it is. It's right there. You see some of these guys walking down the street that you're like, man, it's like you couldn't be a teacher, you're like a phone salesman. Like you're going to be a football player. That's all you could do with your life. Like I had options because my bone structure is not that big. I got a small, I'm just a slightly above average size person that was eating 7,000 calories a day and lifting like a madman to keep that weight on.
Damn, 7,000 calories.
Oh, Tony, I mean, 2 pounds of meat a meal, 2 pounds of meat. It was insane. It's a full. It that's a job in itself. Oh,
Wow.
but to your question, the second part, it's funny. I have friends that have gone. I always say this: you're around. Everyone's kind of around 300 pounds, and generally speaking, I think most guys either go up or down 50. Right? I got some friends that went up 50, and I got some friends that went down 50. But I don't have a lot of friends that stuck around 300 pounds. I might know one guy that kind of stuck around 300. So it's kind of the trend, right? Like nobody wants to listen. If you're not getting paid for it, walking upstairs in a full sweat don't really make a whole lot of sense, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you there. That's so that makes sense. So I guess the answer to that is yeah, y'all trim down so that you could be able to walk up a full flight of
It's
stairs without
Yeah,
freaking
it's really
dying.
that easy. It's really that easy. You walk up every once, it's like if you lose 50 pounds and you remember the best shape you were in as a Marine,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
it's hard to maintain that shape, right?
The first year.
Yeah, but it's like if you ever remember how that felt, like none of us, most of us at least, weren't 300 pounds when we were 12, right? So we kind of know how it feels to feel like, oh, my joints don't hurt. Oh, we want to get back to that at some point.
Wow. Yeah, man. I gotta ask you this too. Hands down, who is the best leader that you've ever, whether it's played for, played with, or just in your life?
Gosh, that's a great question. Um,
I thought for sure you're going to say Brett Favre.
so yeah, I mean, I suppose you could say Brett. He's definitely. Let me tell you, the thing about Brett is Brett had a way about him that allowed you to feel comfortable. You
Mm.
could be in a really serious situation. And first of all, ultimate competitor, extremely smart. Like he's got the hillbilly, accent. He's kind of, he's a very affable guy and makes a lot of jokes. Guy is ridiculous smart. It's like athletes have genius level brain function in a different way, right? But he is because of all the things you can do physically and spatially, etc. He's an extremely smart human being. He could have taught a PhD course on how to run an offense. But the thing that, again, I alluded to this a little bit earlier. The thing that Brett gave me that I think was maybe the most important was that the understanding that if you worked hard and you prepared the right way, then you could show up on a Sunday with extreme confidence and you didn't have to manufacture any of that emotion that I thought we had to just because I don't know, maybe I'm watching the wrong movies when I was growing
Come
up.
on, like the rah that type
Yeah,
of
exactly.
leadership.
You can
Yeah.
just go out. It's okay to just be good and have fun being good. And if you want to smile when you're talking trash, you don't want to talk trash at all. Whatever it is you want to do, you can just have your personality come out because you're so confident. And that's what I think took away from Brett more than anything else is you have that kind of confidence. You can just be exactly who you want to be.
Wow. So I got the fact that he was authentic, the fact that he allowed uh, you all to be comfortable, because I know there's a lot of quarterbacks, they're kind of assholes, right?
You said it. No,
Yeah.
no. I think I think it would be very hard. I think now you see that. Listen, it's a different game now, right?
Mhm.
The brand awareness that these athletes have is completely different than 20, 30 years ago. Completely
Right.
different. And so you're going to have guys that are really worried about how they present all the time. They have camera crews following them. They're worried about their legacy. They're actively talking about these things all the time instead of just focusing on what matters the most. Like I, it, it's always interesting to me. Football is maybe more so than any other sport because it's such a real team sport. That and the Patriots have showed this over and over. When you're successful, the camera crews show up, the sponsors show up, the social media
Mm.
followers show up, the Pro Bowl votes show up. Everything you want shows up when you have success, and everything else that you're doing, it's like you start every day with your tank full, 100% brain power, whatever, energy. And if you're wasting emotional resources, physical resources, chasing something that really isn't going to move the dial, which is what honestly was a lot of us do, you might get the following that you want, you might get the TV, but you might not have the career you could have had. You might not be the player you could have had. And when it's all said and done, those are the guys that call me and say, I wish I would have given it more because it was the thing I wanted to do since I was 6 years old, and I could have given it more and I didn't. And that's a shame.
Wow. So do you think that the personal branding kind of hurts that the whole getting ready and giving your all? Do you think that that's like that is more of a distraction?
I want to be careful when I say this. Listen, there's time in the day to do a lot of things, right? I just think that when you insert yourself at a higher place than the team, especially in football, right? Especially externally, like when people are having to talk about you for the wrong reasons, when you're saying controversial things that is just really solely there to promote yourself. I do think like I'm not a religious guy, but I do think believe there's some karma and there's some kind of like cosmic spirituality involved that you want good vibes only, right? And so I do think that there's kind of a correlation between people and the amount of stuff you see them do off the field and their performance on the field. I think there's very, very few athletes who can maximize their abilities on the field and also capture everything that it is they want to ambition wise off the field. I think that's just a very, very difficult thing. Like you can't have two masters. You got to be focused in on that thing if you really want to be the best.
Wow, man, that's well said. Well said. Well said, man. I love that you said that. In doing some research on you, I didn't find usually when you're looking up somebody, you'll find a scandal or something like. I didn't find that with you, man. No scandal. What's up?
Well, I'll tell you.
I'm
I'll
not
tell you the
saying that there
truth.
should be a scandal,
No, I hope
but
not.
that's kudos to you. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I listen. When I left the Naval Academy, I left it under a bit of over a dark cloud for sure. I made kind of multiple errors in judgment at that point in my life, and what when and just and some bad decisions. And when that happens early in your life, sometimes you get a chance, and you're very very lucky. And what I realized very early on in my NFL career was I'm never going to put myself or my family in a position where I have to have my mom or my dad look at me like they're disappointed. I'm never going to do that to my wife. I'm never going to do that to my kids. And again, I was it was pretty easy for me. I really really liked playing football, and I love preparing to play football better than playing football itself, because I thought that's where I could differentiate myself. And so I would go play, I'd go prepare. I told you before, I'd go home and hang out with my wife. I had some close friends I loved hanging out with. I wasn't really about the rest of it. There wasn't a scandal to be had because I wasn't anywhere you wanted to see me. So so it made it kind of easy.
Oh, I think that says a lot about you. It says a lot about your upbringing, your parents, and what it is that you want in life. I think that is amazing. I did read that that you. I know you are about your paper, your finance. That's one thing I did see where I think you held out and the coach didn't talk to you for about a year or something like that, and you said that you kind of regretted it, but I out loud said, "No, man, why would he regret that? I don't see nothing wrong with that."
I think Mike regretted it. So that was
Did he?
Mike Holmgren. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
I didn't regret it. I mean, listen, I got drafted in the supplemental draft. I had this agent that Neil Cornrich. He took me in and said, here's what we're going to do. I want a 3-year deal instead of a 4-year deal. And so basically, we held out. And when you're in supplemental draft, for those that don't know, that just means you're going to miss like all the pre-training camp, mini camps and all those things. So I'd never put on a Green Bay Packers helmet, and we finally ended up making the deal work about 3 weeks into training camp. And Mike showed up, and I showed up on the field. And I'm happy as you could be, as you can imagine. My first day as a Green Bay Packer, and he came over, and I got berated. And then that practice was kind of like I was going to get manhandled by every single defensive lineman and all these things. And I kind of get what's coming to you at that point. I think later on, what actually happened with Mike is he had Steve Hutchinson in Seattle, who was a first round draft pick and ended up being a Hall of Famer, amazing player. And I think they went through the same thing. And Mike made the comment that somebody sent me the article and said I made the mistake with Mike Wahle of holding this against him and not letting him play this first year when he could have helped our team. I'm not going to make the same mistake now. But those are just, it ends up at this point just ends up being more of a funny story than anything else, right? Because what are you going to do?
Yeah, legendary coach, one of the greatest coaches of all time, got a beef with you because you're trying to make sure that you're setting your family up the right way. I think that says a lot about you, and it says a lot about the strength in your character. Look like we're a little bit over. You got a little bit of time, maybe 2 or 3 minutes.
Sure.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Process to perform. You want to tell me a little bit about that before we wrap up?
Yeah, sure. During COVID, first of all, I guess to back it up, when I went back, I went into finance after I retired. I just had this itch to play, to be around football, be around sports, be around athletes again. And you kind of find your passion. And I went back in. I was lucky enough. Joe Philbin was coaching the Miami Dolphins. I went down there and I started helping coaching with the tight ends. I became a performance coach. I told you I had my CSCS already, and I started seeing this new generation of athlete coming in, and I'd probably had it I probably experienced it from the player standpoint, but you don't really see things quite the same way. And I started noticing that there were these really good athletes that were coming in that were never gonna make it. They were never gonna reach their ceiling. Never gonna be what they wanted really to be since they were 6 years old. And as I looked at it, there's this tool set that I think it takes to become elite.
Mm,
And when I left, I ended up kind of moving on, and I wanted to start this own business of working with pro athletes down to preteens and really helping them and their parents understand if you're one of those athletes that wants to, go from high school and go play in college. Maybe you want to go from college, go to the pros, or maybe you want to get that huge next contract. There are, I think, a very specific tool set of attributes that if you focus on and you foster and you develop, you're going to give yourself the best chance to reach your ceiling, find that next level, and have the success in the career that you want. It's not a guarantee, but again, we're trying to set ourselves up for success. And so that's I created this total athlete development platform that really focuses on three things: mindset development, technical mastery, and ownership decisions, which are just lifestyle decisions in the best interest of future you. So we do that. We do a process to perform podcast as well for players, parents, and coaches interested in kind of having that discussion and going through those motions. And again, it's really just all about, I have such a passion for helping athletes reach their ceiling. And this kind of expands to anything in any competitive endeavor. I'm sure that you recognize with your storied background now and all the people you can go out and reach. All these things are really interconnected. It's just trying to find the narrative that works for different groups.
That's amazing. So do you just work with just athletes, correct?
No, well, I work with athletes. I work, honestly, we work in the business environment. It's like anybody who is, I see a direct correlation between any competitive environment, right? So I look at confrontational sports as something that we can really hone in on specifically with our process to perform. But I also look at really any competitive environment where you need to put in time developing a skill and having a process and forming routines and habits, having a purpose, having that plan to avoid distractions. Those things, right, are all part of the same group to me. So it's just, again, trying to find that narrative of, are you a salesman? Are you a lawyer? Are you a professional athlete? How can we help you the best? How can we make you the best version of you?
Wow, that's good, man. That's really good. I think we all need to could stand to get better on our processes. That's definitely has always been one of my weaknesses, man. When I first started this podcast, I'm like, I'm just going to start a podcast. I'm just going to start reaching out to people. I'm going to start doing, oh, I'm going to do this now. This is what going to be, there's no process, right? There's no process. And I noticed that when I started putting in some of those check systems, things started getting better. And I'm just like, oh man, this is getting easy. I'm more able to enjoy myself now instead of stressing out about, all the different things that I'm doing instead of concentrating on a process for success. And it sounds like that's what you're doing. You're setting these athletes up with a process so that they could be successful. And I think that that is incredible.
Well, just like you said, if you have a process, what does a routine and a process really help you do? It helps you stay present so you can be your best you in that moment. You're not worried about what's next, what's going to happen next, what happened with your last meeting. Having these routines allows you to stay present. And when you're present, even if we're just talking about from a flow state, if we're talking about how your brain actually functions and myelin and white matter, all of these things work the best. We process the best. Our firing patterns are the highest when we are engaged and present in that moment. And it's really difficult. I know it's really difficult for me as my personality, but I think also as an athlete, it's really difficult to stay present if I'm worried about other things. And so I'm
Wow.
sure that's what you've experienced too. Listen, I did the same thing. It was COVID. I didn't know what to do. I had thoughts in my head, and I had a bunch of friends that were talking about, all the CTE stuff was coming up, and I thought I better get some of this information out of my head before I forget it. And
Wow.
so I started the Process to Perform podcast, trying to get this, trying to just have this discussion with athletes and players, parents, and coaches. And you know, a year and a half later, here we are.
Have you had a bunch of concussions? Is that something that you're worried about having CTE?
Well, I'm not worried about it, and that I'm sure that with the amount of concussions I did have, we didn't report them back then. To
Yeah.
be honest, and so I'll just say that I'm sure that the brain plaque and everything is there. The thing that happens, Tony. The only thing I would say, I feel great, and not to make light of this situation, but it's like, when if I forget your name, or if I'm telling a story and I have to find a word, is it because it's me, or is it because I got hit in the head too much? Like, we don't really know. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know what you
Right.
don't know. So I feel great. I try to stay active. We talked about it before. If you stay curious, if you're always kind of trying to have your mind work, trying to learn new things, whether it's a new language or just a new system or a new way of thinking, reading as many books as you can, that kind of stuff, that keeps you young one way or the other.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. And I'm glad that you're cognizant of that. And it sounds like you're really aware. So if we got some folks, I know we got some folks that are watching this, they're like, man, I want to hook up with Mike Wall. I want to learn some of this stuff because it is interesting stuff. Where can they find you?
On Twitter, it's Mike Wall 68. Process to Perform on Instagram, and my website is just process2perform.com. Those are probably the easiest ways to hit me up.
All right, man. Any parting words before we go?
Just listen. I really appreciate what you're doing here. I think these opportunities, not only from some of my perspective as somebody who's to come on and have a discussion with you, because for me, I don't know about you, but I just really love having these discussions with interesting
Me
people.
too.
And so I just want to say thank you for having me on. And again, it's these are always I think I always get more out of these than I give. So I appreciate it.
Likewise, likewise. And I honestly, I see why so many people that have a podcast or have a TV show, why they write books, because it's not about what I know. I talk to people that I genuinely want to learn something from. Like I really want to, I've learned so much from you. I'm like looking at my desk. I've been writing stuff about processes. I'm gonna go to your website. I'm gonna check it out, look at some of the stuff that you got going on because I mean, if we're not learning, we're dying. You know what I
That's
mean?
the
So I
truth.
want to,
That's the truth.
yeah, I want to thank you for reaching out and coming on the show, dude. It means a lot, dude. Thank you for blessing my audience with your presence, dude. Has been amazing.
Well, thanks, Tony. Thanks again for having me, man.
All right, will you stick around while I close up?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, all right, all right. We are done with season two. No, we're not done with season two. Done with season two, episode two. That was an incredible conversation with Mike Wall. Man, I don't know if 30 minutes is enough is enough to have these conversations. I kind of want to take it back to 45 to an hour. Y'all let me know in the comments what do you think? Did y'all get enough of Mike Wall or do y'all want me to bring him back for another hour? Let me know. But next week, December 9th, we got Reggie Walker. I'm excited to talk to Reggie. Reggie is an incredible human being. He's also a former NFL player. Now he's an advocate for all things. Such an incredible dude. I'm looking forward to speaking with him. That's next week, Thursday, December 9th. Reggie Walker. I'm looking over here at my board because I can't remember nothing, man. So I got to have a list right there so that I can see it. But yeah, if you like the show, you like the people that we're bringing on the show, you're just in love with the content, do me a big favor. Go and check us out. Leaders Lead the podcast. We're on Apple, we're on Deezer, we're on Spotify, we're on all the things. But if you're going to go to Apple, oh, no, it's over here. What you can do is you can go ahead and scan this right here, and it'll take you straight to the podcast. Leave me a review. I really would appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate you for all the things that you're doing, all the things that you're going to do. I just know that you're going to do something special. So, y'all take care, and I will see you next week. Whew, that was great. If you enjoyed this podcast, well, I'm sure you enjoyed it. If you're still here with us, what I want you to do is head over to your favorite podcast and streaming network and give us a download, subscribe to the channel, and also let us know what you think about the show. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you for the things that you've done. Thank you for the things that you're doing. And especially thank you for the things that you're going to do, because I know that you're going to do something amazing.